remember using all the strength I had to scoot over to the side of my hospital bed so that my husband could come and join me. And he gently laid next to me, held me in his arms, and we just wept. The doctors had just told us that in a few minutes I would be rolled into the OR, but they had also had us sign documentation and told us that it wasn't guaranteed that I would be coming out alive. I didn't know what to expect. There were so many questions, and it felt like so many dreams that we had were shattered in that moment. It started about 10 months before. 2 weeks after our honeymoon together, we came back and I started feeling weird. I had all of these odd symptoms that were going on in my body, and I couldn't quite tell what was happening. The first doctor I saw said that I had leukemia, and it was a shattering diagnosis. It was so scary when I first heard that word. And I ended up having to have more labs and went to more specialists, and then I would get results back saying, no, this isn't leukemia. We need more tests. So I would go for more tests. The next specialist tells me this looks like it might be a lymphoma, a cancer of your lymph nodes. And we weren't quite sure what was causing this or where it was coming from. I was only 24 years old at the time. Finally, one of the doctors told me that it was most likely that I had colon cancer. At 24 years old, that was such a scary diagnosis. And I had to go through a series of more tests and more lab work. But every time then something would come back and say, no, it's actually not that. We just don't know what's happening. All I knew was that my body was getting weaker by the day. I was constantly burning fevers of 104 degrees. I was not able to eat. Every day my body got weaker and weaker. And I had so many questions. A lot of the questions sounded like, why, God? This was not what I had expected. This was not what my happily ever after was supposed to be like. We had just gotten married with big dreams of doing big things for God. My husband had started at his first church, and we were just starting life together. And this just felt like our dreams were being shattered into thousands of pieces. And I was left with big questions. I couldn't believe that this is what my life had come to. But I remember in that moment being held by my husband, crying, not knowing if this was the last time that we would have this embrace together. And something beautiful happened. And that very moment is when my healing took place. And my healing didn't happen physically, or I didn't necessarily feel like strength was coming into my body or some miraculous thing was happening, but rather the healing that took place was a healing of my heart. And in that moment, I realized that I could believe in God, that I knew that He was my healer, even if I didn't in that moment receive the healing. God gave me the gift of faith in that moment, a faith that believes Him for who He is, not contingent on what He does. I was able to, in that moment, pray, surrender my dreams, my hopes, knowing that God would make all things right. And He did. In fact, after that first surgery, I needed a couple more procedures. But every day I started to get stronger and stronger. And our story took a turn for the better. Every day I was able to see God's work in my life, restoring what I thought this illness had taken from us. And now, 16 years later, I look back and I see how God's faithfulness has carried me through all of these years. I now have the privilege of raising 3 beautiful kids, working alongside my husband in ministry. And that has also given me the opportunity to walk alongside others who are going through their valleys, through these difficult and trying moments where there's questions. And even there is where I get to tell them, God is so real and He's faithful to His promises. We may not always see them. We may not always have a tangible evidence to hold on to in the moment, but we know that He is faithful to His promises. And how do we know that? because he gives us his presence. I can't wait to see how God is going to continue growing my faith. I know that it might require some hard times, some difficult and challenging moments. There might be some other moments ahead where I have questions, but what I've learned to be true about my God is that he is faithful. And just like he led in the past, he will continue to lead in the future. So I hold on to that. The same God that has walked with me through deep waters is the same God who will continue to walk with me through whatever is to come in the future.